The dining room smelled of rosemary and pretension. Mom's antique crystal glasses caught the light from the chandelier, the one my sister Olivia had insisted they buy to upgrade the ambience. Everything about our monthly family dinners was designed to showcase success, or at least the appearance of it. I sat quietly, cutting my roast beef into precise squares while Olivia dominated the conversation. And then, she gushed, swirling her wine. James and I just fell in love with Unit 4B at the Mason. You know that luxury complex downtown? The views are absolutely incredible. Mom beamed. Oh, honey, that's wonderful. Those units are so exclusive. They are, Olivia preened. The waitlist is usually months long, but James knows people. She turned to me, her smile sharp as a paper cut. What about you, Sarah? Still in that little rental on Oak Street? I took a small sip of water. Yes, still there. Oh, her tone dripped with fake sympathy. Well, I suppose not everyone can afford to live somewhere nice. The Mason has such strict income requirements. She laughed, the sound like wind chimes made of ice. Poor thing, still paying rent at your age. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. Mom suddenly became very interested in her napkin, but Olivia wasn't done. You know, if you'd focused more on your career instead of all those investment courses you were always taking, maybe you could afford something better by now. I placed my fork down carefully. 10 years of calculated silence, of letting them believe what they wanted to believe, had led to this moment. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts with deliberate slowness. Actually, Olivia, speaking of the Mason, I hit dial and put the phone on speaker. The room filled with soft ringing. Hello, Ms. Anderson. How can I help you? Ms. Wilson's crisp professional voice carried clearly across the dinner table. Hi, Ms. Wilson. This is Sarah Anderson, the owner. I need you to prepare a notice for Unit 4B. Their lease won't be renewed next month. The silence that followed was absolute. Olivia's wine glass froze halfway to her lips. Mom's fork clattered against her plate. Of course, Ms. Anderson. I'll prepare the paperwork right away. Would you like me to deliver it personally, or send it through mail? Personal delivery, please. Tomorrow morning would be perfect. Consider it done. Anything else? No, that's all. Thank you, Ms. Wilson. I ended the call and returned to my roast beef, taking another small, careful bite. The meat had gone cold, but I barely noticed. I was too busy watching the color drain from Olivia's face as realization dawned. You're lying, she stammered. This is some kind of joke. I reached into my bag and pulled out a slim leather portfolio. Inside was the deed to the Mason, along with quarterly revenue reports and tenant listings. I slid them across the table without a word. But how? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. Remember all those investment courses you mocked? The ones that were wasting my time while Olivia was climbing the corporate ladder? I smiled slightly. Turns out they were quite useful. I bought the Mason 3 years ago through my holding company, along with 6 other properties in the city. Dad picked up the papers with trembling hands. These numbers, Sarah. This is... Yes, Dad. Your struggling daughter manages a real estate portfolio worth just over $40 million. I turned to Olivia, whose face had shifted from shock to something closer to horror. And yes, sis, the Mason does have very strict income requirements. Unfortunately, you and James fall just short of them for next year's lease terms. You can't do this, Olivia's voice cracked. We just finished decorating. We hosted a housewarming party last week. Actually, I can. It's my building. I stood up, smoothing my simple black dress. But don't worry. I hear there are some nice rentals available on Oak Street. Mom found her voice. Sarah, be reasonable. Your sister didn't mean. Yes, she did. I cut her off gently. She meant every word, every smirk, every subtle dig over the years. You all did. I picked up my bag, leaving the portfolio on the table. You were so busy looking down on me, you never bothered to look up and see what I was building. Please. Olivia's voice had shifted to something desperate. James' clients, our friends. We told everyone we'd be there for at least a year. I paused at the dining room door. You know what the funny thing is? If you'd ever once shown genuine interest in my life, asked about my work, treated me with basic respect, I would have given you that apartment for free. Family discount and all that. I glanced back one last time. But we're not really family, are we? We're just people who share DNA and a dining room once a month. The silence followed me out to my car, a modest Honda Civic that had been another source of their jokes. They didn't know about the Porsche in my private garage, or the beach house in Malibu, or the startup incubator I'd funded last year. They couldn't know anything about me, really. And now, as I drove away from their perfectly manicured suburban life, I realized they never would, because I wasn't just the owner of their precious luxury apartment building. I was the owner of my own story. And for the first time in 10 years, I was finally letting myself tell it. My phone buzzed with texts, first from Olivia, then Mom, then Dad, each one more desperate than the last. I turned off the notifications and headed toward downtown, toward the Mason's gleaming glass tower, rising against the evening sky. My tower, my rules, my victory. Sometimes silence isn't just golden. Sometimes it's strategic. And sometimes, just sometimes, it builds empires while others are too busy judging to notice them rise. The next morning, I sat in my private office on the top floor of the Mason, watching the city wake up through floor-to-ceiling windows. The same windows Olivia had bragged about at countless social gatherings, never knowing her view was courtesy of her struggling sister. My intercom buzzed. Ms. Anderson? Ms. Wilson here. I've just delivered the notice to Unit 4B as requested. Thank you. How did they take it? Mr. James Davidson was quite vocal. He'd insisted on speaking with the owner directly. I smiled faintly. I'm sure he did. Please remind him that all communication needs to go through proper channels. Already done. Though, Ms. Wilson hesitated. There's something else. A woman is here to see you. Says she's your mother. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course. Mom always believed she could fix everything with a well-timed emotional appeal. Send her up. 3 minutes later, my office door opened. Mom stepped in, then stopped abruptly. I could see her taking in the space, the modern art on the walls, the custom desk, the view she praised so often in Olivia's apartment, not knowing an even better version existed just floors above. Sarah. She smoothed her designer blouse, clearly uncomfortable. This is quite an office. Thank you. Please sit. I gestured to one of the leather chairs facing my desk. She perched on the edge like she was afraid of settling in. Honey, we need to talk about what happened last night. Do we? You can't just evict your sister. Think about how this will look. I leaned back in my chair. Interesting. Your first concern is appearances, not the fact that your daughters haven't had a real conversation in years. That's not fair. We've always supported you. Have you? I opened my laptop, pulling up a folder I'd kept for years. Let's review, shall we? When I wanted to take that first real estate course, Dad called it throwing money away. When I started my investment company, you told everyone I was between jobs. When I missed Olivia's engagement party because I was closing my first major property deal, you said I was selfish and jealous of her success. We were worried about you. You were so secretive, never telling us anything. I tried. Every dinner, every holiday, I tried to share my work. But you were always too busy praising Olivia's latest promotion or James' new car or their perfect life in their perfect apartment. I closed the laptop softly. The apartment I own. Mom's face crumpled slightly. Why didn't you just tell us? Would you have believed me? Or would you have assumed I was lying to compete with Olivia? She didn't answer. She didn't need to. We both knew the truth. The notice stands, I said firmly. They have 30 days to find new accommodation. Sarah, please. Your sister is devastated. She had to call in sick to work today. James is threatening to. To what? Sue? He's welcome to try. Every lease agreement is ironclad, and I have documentation of 3 noise complaints against their unit in the past month alone. Mom's eyes widened. You've been monitoring them? I monitor all my properties. It's called being a responsible owner. I stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a meeting with my development team about our new project in Seattle. Seattle? She looked lost. You're expanding there too? Among other places. I walked to the door, holding it open. You know, Mom, all those times you and Dad pushed me to be more like Olivia, to follow her path. Did you ever consider that I was building something bigger than a corner office and a luxury apartment? She stopped in the doorway, turning to face me. We just wanted you to be successful. I am successful. You just defined success too narrowly to see it. After she left, I walked to the window, watching her expensive car pull away from the curb. My phone buzzed, a text from Olivia. This is cruel, even for you. I typed back. No, cruel is 10 years of subtle digs and public humiliation. This is just business. Another buzz. Mom says you have properties in Seattle now. What else are you hiding? I smiled but didn't respond. Let her wonder. Let them all wonder. Ms. Wilson's voice came through the intercom again. Ms. Anderson? The development team is ready for you in the conference room. Thank you. Oh, and Ms. Wilson? Please start compiling listings for available units in the building. Similar size to 4B, but perhaps with slightly less desirable views. For your sister? No. For the 3 families on our waiting list who actually meet our income requirements. It's time to maintain some standards around here. As I gathered my materials for the meeting, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different somehow, stronger, clearer, more myself than I'd ever been at those suffocating family dinners. My phone buzzed again. Dad, this time. We should talk. Over dinner, maybe? Your choice of restaurant. I left it unanswered. They'd had 10 years of dinners to talk to me, to see me, to understand what I was building. Now they could wait, because the empire I'd built in silence. It was just the beginning, and this time, I wouldn't be quiet about it. The next week unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony of consequences. I sat in my home office, not the modest Oak Street apartment they knew about, but my actual residence, a restored Victorian mansion in the city's most exclusive neighborhood, reviewing the security footage from the Mason. Olivia had shown up every day, alternating between demands and pleas with Ms. Wilson. James had tried legal threats, then bribes, then finally resorted to leaving desperate voicemails about family obligations. I watched it all with a detached sort of fascination, like observing specimens in a lab. Then came the email that changed everything. Ms. Anderson, I represent the Davidson family's interests in several commercial properties downtown. We've recently learned you're the owner of the Mason. I believe we could turn this unfortunate situation into a mutually beneficial opportunity. Perhaps we could discuss over lunch. Best regards, Marcus Sterling, Senior Partner, Sterling and Associates. I laughed quietly. James' father's law firm. Of course. They still thought this was a negotiation. I typed a brief response. Mr. Sterling? Thank you for your interest. However, I should inform you that the Mason is just one of 17 properties in my portfolio. This includes the building where Sterling and Associates currently leases its offices. Your lease is up for renewal next quarter. I look forward to reviewing your firm's application along with other potential tenants. Best, Sarah Anderson, CEO, Anderson Holdings. I hit send and waited. 3 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Olivia. You own the Sterling building too? Her voice shook. Sarah, what are you? A good investor? Something none of you ever bothered to understand. James' father is furious. He's talking about blacklisting you in real estate circles. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Interesting threat. Has he checked who owns the properties housing the city's top 3 law firms? Or the new tech complex where his biggest clients are headquartered? Silence. Then, how? How much do you actually own? Enough to ensure that blacklisting me would be problematic for many influential people. I paused. Including Dad's engineering firm. Their building lease is under review too, by the way. Dad's office? Her voice cracked. Sarah, you can't. Can't what? Make business decisions about my properties? Isn't that what you and James do? What Mom and Dad praised you for? Being tough and business-minded. More silence. Then softly, what do you want? Want? I looked out my window at the city skyline, my skyline, in many ways. I want what I've always wanted. Recognition, respect. A family that sees me for who I am, not who they assumed I'd be. By destroying us? No, Olivia. By showing you who I've become while you were too busy looking down to look up. I sighed. Check your email in an hour. You'll find a list of available properties within your actual budget. Not as prestigious as the Mason, but decent. Consider it a professional courtesy. That's it? That's all you have to say? No. I stood, walking to my wall of achievements, awards, recognitions, magazine covers featuring my properties, all collected over years of work they dismissed as wasting time. I also want you to explain to Mom and Dad why their perfect daughter and son-in-law are moving to a lesser address. Tell them the truth. All of it, including how you treated the sister who could have been your biggest ally. I ended the call and pressed my intercom. Ms. Wilson, please prepare the paperwork for Unit 4B's new tenants, the Thompson family, the ones with the 2 kids in medical school. They meet all requirements and their reference checks are impeccable. Right away, Ms. Anderson. Oh, and the Seattle development team sent over the final proposals. They're quite impressive. Thank you. I'll review them this afternoon. I sat back down, opening my laptop to check the latest property acquisitions. A notification popped up. Another email from Mom. Sarah, your father and I have been doing some research. The properties, the investments, the scale of what you've built. We had no idea. No idea at all. We failed you. Not in the way we thought. Worrying you weren't successful enough, but by not seeing how extraordinary you actually are. If you're willing, we'd like to learn about your work, your companies, everything we should have asked about years ago, not to benefit from it, but to understand our daughter. Love. Mom. I read it twice, then pulled up my calendar. After a moment's consideration, I blocked off next Thursday evening and typed, "Dinner at 7. My office. Come ready to listen. Sarah." Then I turned back to my work, to the empire I'd built in silence, to the future I was still creating. Because success isn't just about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. And sometimes the quietest builder creates the tallest towers. Mom's response came quickly. "We'll be there." And Sarah? "We're proud of you." We should have said that years ago. I didn't reply. They'd need to prove it with more than words this time. But as I looked out at my city, at the buildings bearing my invisible fingerprints, I felt something shift. Not forgiveness, not yet, but perhaps the foundation of something new. Sometimes the best revenge isn't serving it cold, it's serving it with a side of enlightenment. And as the sun set over my skyline, I smiled, knowing that tomorrow would bring another day of building, growing, and rising. Not in silence anymore, but in the clear, bright light of truth. Because I wasn't just Sarah Anderson, the overlooked sister. I was Sarah Anderson, CEO, property mogul, empire builder. And finally, everyone knew it.